All right, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I know it's Mardi Gras night. People are cranking out that last bit of fun, last bit of excitement. Parades are all over with. A long time ago, there was a parade called Comus, who would roll about this time, and most of the people on the float were too drunk to throw anything, and they would do this massive race to get to um I think it's Gallia Hall they were going to. I don't remember where the meeting of the court was, but it was a massive race for Comus and Rex to meet and toast before midnight, because midnight Mardi Gras is over with. And if ever you have trouble sleeping, if ever you wanted to see what really rich people do for fun, I advise you to put on PBS tonight if you're in New Orleans, but watch PBS or go on YouTube and look up the meeting of the courts, Rex and Comus, and see the most strange, bizarre, boring activity you've ever seen in your life. The Mystic Crew of Comus, the guy keeps his face hidden, and the court keeps their face hidden. And it's a really strange tradition. They've got people dressed as, they got these costumes on. One's a moon, and one is some kind of, it's like a sun, and there's other kind of things. And it's just a huge deal that they've been doing since 1872. And that's probably the only significance of it. And PBS shows this. I use Not on the Court. They're in full gown and everything else. And midnight, Mardi Gras is over with. And if you're out in the quarter at midnight, that's actually the fun thing to see. The police all come marching down Bourbon Street and with the bullhorn going, Mardi Gras is over, time to clear the streets. And they got the street sweeping machines behind it. And it's weird. It's over with. It's all done. There's nothing out there. And the next day is Lent, and people going to mass. So the people you saw flashing for beads and everything else, you see walking around with ashes on their foreheads. So I guess they got to forgive their sins. So yeah, it's an unusual tradition. I've got my Mardi Gras shirt on. This is this is a pearless Mardi Gras shirt. You know, I got to show off the brand and everything else like that. But that's my Mardi Gras shirt. That's about the sum total of my. In the back, it's the manhole cover with Mardi Gras written on it. So anyway, the manhole cover is kind of a big deal in the city because it's artistic.
Yeah.
So anyway, how are you doing, Bob? It's just a regular Tuesday for you.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I respect Mardi Gras. Happy Mardi Gras to everybody. Happy early Lent for those who celebrate it. I guess celebrate isn't the right word. Those who observe it. And I was telling our Saints News Network chat earlier that one of these years I'm going to make it back down to Mardi Gras. I've been down there once during Mardi Gras, but I was also 24 years old. And let's just say I'm many years into sobriety now, so part of me would like to experience Mardi Gras sober for a change, because fuzzy memories back in '96. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
We actually had tickets to Super Bowl 30 that year, or 31, excuse me, to Super Bowl 31 that year. Because as many of you knew, I know I also grew up a big Bronco fan of the Denver Elways. My friend, doubles partner Jason, is a big Steelers fan. Well, in the '95 playoffs, the Broncos were the number one seed. The Steelers were defending AFC champions. So we thought for sure that at least one of our teams was going to go to the Super Bowl, right? So we had some money back then. Super Bowl tickets were expensive, but not nearly what they are now. So we bought Super Bowl tickets. We had hotel reservations, all that happy stuff. Well, the Steelers got eliminated in the wild card round. The Broncos got upset by the Jacksonville Jaguars in the divisional round. So we talked to each other and we're like, do you really want to go see the Super Bowl? And it ended up, of course, being the, Brett Favre's Packers versus, Drew Bledsoe's Patriots. We're like, not really. But we'd both been to New Orleans before. We wanted to go back. So we decided, we're like, you know what? Let's see if we could push back, we'll sell our tickets, which we were successful in doing. So we'll push some of our reservations back, and we'll just go down for a few days of Mardi Gras, and that's what we did. So that's my near Super Bowl visual experience. I have some regret in not going to the game itself and experiencing that. But again, I hate the Packers. I hated even the pre-Tom Brady Patriots. I didn't like them. So that was my Mardi Gras experience.
Yeah, it's funny because that Super Bowl, I watched it. I think I was still in New Orleans then. I don't think I was in Lafayette yet. No, I had to be in Lafayette because I was already married and Matthew was there. So I did see it in New Orleans, but it must have been because I was in town for Mardi Gras. The only thing I can think of. It didn't feel like a Super Bowl, I think as it was pretty common knowledge that Bill Parcells was leaving after that game.
Yeah.
And, it was one of those games that it felt like it was already kind of preordained. There was no way the Packers were going to lose this game. The close Super Bowls really hadn't started happening yet. You were still right there with the super blowouts. Even though you had the Bills Giants one, the rest of them, the two Cowboys, the Redskins Super Bowl, they all were blowouts. They were all super blowouts. So I guess it really didn't feel like a Super Bowl. And it really wasn't until 1999, the Rams Titans, that really it started to change. And it became, people started to say, okay, these games could be good. These games might start getting close. And I say that because even then it didn't feel like it wasn't going to be a break in that tradition. But since 2000, you really started to have more close games. I think that's where the interest in the games have really picked up, and the whole Super Bowl commercial thing kind of that took off. Of course, 1984 with the introduction of the Macintosh, but that kind of took off because you had the super blowouts. Since that point, you haven't had those, so it's hard for people to really remember. Because there's a whole generation of people who've never seen any of those games live.
Right.
They only know about those, through what they've heard from other people. So going back to the Super Bowl, it didn't feel like it was going to be a very good game. It didn't feel like a Super Bowl. And it wasn't until after it was over with, you kind of like, oh, yeah, there really was a pretty good game. And it really was a big Super Bowl. But, there was just so many, news things that were going on about that, and the Saints, of course, stunk. That was the end of Jim Mora. Mike Dicker had just gotten hired, so it's hard to get people really interested in, hey, let's go watch the Super Bowl. Let's go see a Super Bowl game, because it's like the Saints will never be in one, so why would you want to watch this? So, what were your thoughts of the Super Bowl?
I know you read my morning article about my favorite human being, and the Super Bowl is no longer a game to me. Hasn't been for quite some time. It is an event, and I mean. Yep. It's been an extravaganza for decades and decades, and I get that part. But with the corrupt Roger Goodell regime, this feels more like a WWE pay-per-view event than it does a football game. As do many big games, in the NFL. And that's what my article was about. If you guys haven't read it, either go on to one of my Twitter, Facebook profile, or just scroll down the Saints News Network. You'll see a big old picture of my favorite human being, Roger Goodell. And then read it. Because to me, any big game, playoff game, or Super Bowl in the Roger Goodell era, it's all about the storylines and figuring out the Goodell angle. And my prediction for the Super Bowl was based off of what I thought was going to be the preferred Goodell storyline, which is shoving the narrative of the latest dynasty and shoving the narrative of the latest greatest of all time. Wearing my "Surrounded by Idiots" shirt today because I knew the subject was going to come up. And that's the storyline Goodell wanted, I suspect, and that's the storyline Goodell got. I'm thankful for two things. Number one, that this damn football season is finally officially over. So I'm grateful for that. And number two, despite what I just said, and despite anybody with a shred of sanity and intelligence realizing that Roger Goodell and this regime is blatantly corrupt, I am very thankful that this game did not come down to officiating. I thought both defenses played extremely well. I thought both offenses played it very, very close to the vest. And eventually Andy Reid just kind of turned it over to Patrick Mahomes. And meanwhile, Kyle Shanahan, in my opinion, remained too close to the vest. And that was the difference in the game. I guess congratulations to the Kansas City Chiefs. But again, growing up a Broncos fan, and based off the narrative that I just said about Mahomes, and the most recent dynasty, I hate the Kansas City Chiefs, and reaching all the way back to the Dome Patrol days, I hate the San Francisco 49ers. So I wasn't rooting for either team. I was rooting for a non-corrupt, competitively played football game, and I think we at least got that.
It's interesting you brought that up, because the playing close to the vest, because I think you saw this kind of unfold as this game went on. Somebody asked earlier, or some people were talking about, this is the third Super Bowl that Mike Shanahan has choked away, counting the 28-3 one. The two 49ers losses, then this, and the Atlanta Falcons one. I want to get your thoughts on this, because this is kind of how I feel about it. It's almost like Shanahan has become playoff Marty Schottenheimer, but it's in the big game. It's in the Super Bowl, not in the playoffs leading up to this. And I think it's because that 28-3 so haunts him, because what was the criticism about how he blew that lead? He stopped running the football.
Yep.
He was trying to go for the big play. He was trying to humiliate Belichick, and he ended up giving Brady more opportunities to come back and win the game. Instead of kicking the field goal to staying in field goal range, his team sort of self-destructed. Well, if you go back and watch the Super Bowl, and I've watched a couple of times, the first couple possessions of the 49ers, they are just steamrolling the Chiefs. I mean, they're running the ball right down their throats. Every offensive play is just perfect. You're beating their best corner. You're getting these possessions, stuff like that. But the minute that muff punt, and I don't blame the returner at all, because he's yelling at everyone, "Get away, get away!" And somebody, 25, I don't know who he is, or 28, I should say. I know who 25 is. 28 doesn't hear it or doesn't react quickly enough. The ball hits him in the back of the leg, and now he has to jump on it. Instead of falling on it, he's trying to scoop it up almost, and the Chiefs get the ball back, score in the very next play. The momentum changes, and from that point on, the whole game sort of changed. The way Shanahan was calling the play. plays. I know it was a Freudian slip there. And it reminded me of Marty Schottenheimer. Lynn Elliott missing all those field goals, which he hadn't done all season. The Chargers game, infamously telling the defensive back, hey, if you're going to get an interception to Brady, just go down. He doesn't go down, he fumbles. Just strange things happening. And Marty Schottenheimer had got into his head, I got to do something different. I got to change what I'm doing to avoid this ending when a mistake happens. And I felt like the Niners, Dre Grenlaw, tearing his Achilles, hopping up to run out on the field, bizarre, fluke injuries like that, missing an extra point, and that's been a great kicker who kicked three big field goals in this game. In the muff punt, it was just these fluke things. And I forgot Deebo Samuel hurting his hamstring. Now he came back out there and made some plays, but he wasn't as explosive as he was. He was much more guarded in his running. But yeah, these fluke things happening, and the more they would happen, the more he just tightened up on everything and just didn't want to make the mistake. And he kicked that field goal in overtime because I don't want to risk not getting any points. Is that how it felt to you?
Yeah. Kyle Shanahan can't get out of his own way mentally. And I fully agree with you that you have to believe, or at least wonder, if that 28-3 still haunts him, because it's brought up a lot. And and I mentioned not the 28-3, but I mentioned the stigma surrounding Kyle Shanahan even before this game. About several circles, already proclaiming him as a guy that can never win the big game. Not hasn't ever won the big game, but the coach that can never win the big game, which I think is blatantly ridiculous. Because A, revisionist history, B, recency bias. It wasn't that long ago that people were saying the same exact thing about a coach named Andy Reid. And that's all forgotten about now. In fact, one Super Bowl, Reid's first with Kansas City, back against Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers in 2021, I think it was. That erased Reid's one Super Bowl loss, 5 trips to the NFC Championship game, and only going to the Super Bowl with one of them. I think Kyle Shanahan is a good coach, but so was that earlier Andy Reid that I mentioned. So was Marty Schottenheimer. So was Bud Grant and Marv Levy. Two guys that went 0-4 in the Super Bowls. So the more, and I remember both John Elway and Dan Reeves, who lost 3 together with the Denver Broncos. I remember very vividly, interviews that they would have when they would be asked these questions, and they would both say similar things. And that, once you lose 1 and then 2, it even if you don't admit it out loud, it gets ingrained in your head. And when something starts to go off the rails, you almost go into a subconscious panic trying to right the ship. And pretty soon that subconscious becomes very conscious, and you tighten up. Everything that you do, every mistake that you make, all of a sudden is magnified, because you're either trying too hard or you're too tight. So that not only goes for players, that very much goes for coaches too. And you have to wonder, because Shanahan has also lost 2 NFC Championship games. One, they were down to an emergency quarterback. So you kind of discount that. But you do have to wonder what's going on. With a guy like Kyle Shanahan mentally, once you've lost a few big ones, and in similar fashion, I mean, you're talking about 2 losses to the Chiefs, 2 times where you've, stumbled away 10-point lead in the second half. In addition to that 28-3, I feel for the guy, and I think he's a good coach. I think he's a very good coach. But he has a rather relatively unfair stigma on him right now, for sure.
Well, yeah, and John Madden used to talk about that too because John Madden's Raiders lost a lot of AFC Championship games, and they said that he couldn't win the big one.
Mhm.
And John's response used to be, "Well, tell me when the little ones are,"
Right.
because you say I can't win the big games. He says, the teams that we lost to went on to win a championship, so we lost to a pretty good team. you know. And once they won that Super Bowl, once the Raiders got there and won, all that went away. Don
Hmm.
Shula had the same kind of thing. Don Shula lost Super Bowl three. It cost him. It didn't cost him his job because he left before he got fired, but his relationship with Carol Rosenblum went to shit after that night, after that game, because if you watch America's Game, the story of the story of the Baltimore Colts in Super Bowl five, Bill Curry tells the story. He said, I was standing right there, and he's looking. Carol Rosenblum looks up and addresses the team, and he's looking right at Don Shula. He says, I did not own this team to be embarrassed, and which they were, because they were the first team to lose to an AFL team, which a team, an organization they mocked. Um, I did not come to be ridiculed. I did not just own this team to be mocked or to lose. He said, so, you guys basically have a year to straighten this out, or everyone's gone. And of course, the Colts don't go back to the Super Bowl to 1970, a year, 2 years after Super Bowl three. But the Don Shula is gone
Hmm.
by 1970, and he goes to Miami. Well, he gets Miami the Super Bowl quickly. In 71, he plays the Cowboys, another team that can't win. The whole 60s, they can't win. They lost to the Packers twice. They lost to the Browns. They were always next year's champion. They finally get to Super Bowl five. They lose to the Colts in the Mistake Bowl, is what they used to call that Super Bowl. The famous shot of Bob Lilly, the first draft pick ever of the Dallas Cowboys, throwing his helmet because they lost yet again. So they finally get to the Super Bowl. They've got to play Don Shula, the man who can't win the big one either. They beat the Dolphins pretty convincingly in 71 in an old Tulane Stadium. But yeah, labels, once you start losing one or two games, you get that label. And that's all the media talks about. So I think that's what Shanahan is dealing with in that case. And, you know, this is not a pity party about Shanahan or anything like that. It's just, I think it's pretty illustrative because here we are, we're the Saints. We want this offense that Kyle Shanahan has developed and devised. We hired officially Klint Kubiak. Now the Super Bowl's over with. We brought in their offensive line well, it wasn't their offensive line coach. I think it was his coach he worked with in Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. Um, and we
Benton.
also John
Benton,
Benton, yeah.
yeah. Benton and Kubiak, Klint Kubiak worked together in Minnesota. And Benton was also Kyle Shanahan's offensive line coach before Klint
Okay.
Kubiak got there between 17 and 20.
Okay. I knew there was a 49ers connection, but I couldn't remember. And then we brought in a quarterbacks coach. So we still have a running backs coach and a receivers coach to hire. But I watched the 49ers offense because I wanted to see this offense and imagining where the Saints would fit in, what concepts would they probably use to fit in with our personnel that the 49ers like to use. I saw a lot, actually,
Hmm.
despite the way this game kind of unfolded. And like I said, I felt Shanahan his nuts kind of tightened up once the mistakes started happening. But I saw a lot that I really liked that I want the Saints to implement. but there's one play of the Kansas City Chiefs I really, really want them to start imitating, and that's the play that ends the game. It's called Corn Dog, but that is a fantastic play. And they scored twice against the Eagles last year in the Super Bowl. I really want to see the Saints do this with Rashid Shaheed on our offense, because I think it's an awesome play. Yeah, I know John Benton's an ex-Saint. We talked about a little bit about this last week. He was a strike player. So yeah, I had no idea who the hell he was. I had to look it up. He was on the strike team. So yeah, I pride myself on knowing a lot of obscure Saints players. I didn't know who he was. Tell us a little bit. We talked a little bit about it last week, but now it's official. Tell us a little bit about Benton. And I don't remember the name of the quarterback's coach. He was with the Bears last year. Talk a little bit about those two guys.
Yeah, and let's start with the quarterback coach. His name is Andrew Janocko. I think I'm saying that right. Again, he has worked with Klint Kubiak in Minnesota. He was officially with the Vikings from 2015 to 2021. So, he's not only familiar with Klint's concepts, and the type of offense that he wants to run, but Kirk Cousins had some pretty darn good years, with the Vikings during that stretch. And I know everybody wants to jump on the fact, that Andrew comes from Chicago, Justin Fields is this and isn't that. Yeah, you're right. But Justin Fields was this and wasn't that before Andrew got there. Focus on how well Kirk Cousins played, up through 2021, while Janocko was there. And also, people are forgetting the fact they want to focus on the failures of Justin Fields. A rookie free agent quarterback named Tyler Badgett was playing pretty darn well. If you're going to look for a positive, look for that kind of thing. And again, he comes from the Kubiak Shanahan-ish, coaching tree, where they like to, they like to pepper the shorter and intermediate routes, with one deep receiver to take the top off. That in itself is a very simple concept. But they use their quarterbacks a lot on half rolls. Kind of going back to the concepts that even Kansas City likes to use with Mahomes. Derek Carr is not a guy that's going to win many foot races with too many people, but he's mobile enough to get outside on those half rolls, where you kind of you bring a drag receiver out with him, and then another receiver layered down the field, that's kind of shadowing that route, and then a guy running on the opposite end where you have a short window, if you have a quarterback with relatively decent arm strength, you're kind of throwing against your body there, which announcers love to say is a big no-no. That's actually more common than what you think on half rolls, because you roll, if you're a right-handed quarterback, you take a half roll to your right, you plant, and then again you have that small window, going back to your left, and then you have the deep sideline route receiver too. So I think we're going to see a lot of those kind of concepts, both from Andrew and from Klint. And then going back to John Benton, as you said, as we figured out last week, he's a former Saints replacement player, back in the '87 season. But has a long career, both collegiate and professional level. Again, everybody wants to focus on the fact that Benton's last stop was with the New York Jets, a truly pathetic offense. But he did pretty darn good before that, with the 49ers, with Shanahan's 49ers, when he was there, 2017 through 2020. So Benton is a highly respected offensive line coach. I don't mind that hire whatsoever. Andrew's case, again, I still would have preferred, and I actually would have placed money down on the Saints quarterback coach being either Brian Griese or Klint's brother, Clay Kubiak, both of which with the San Francisco 49ers. you got to figure one of those guys are going to be promoted into Klint's spot. I thought for sure that either Clay or Greasy, the one that didn't get the promotion, would end up here in New Orleans. It still could happen, but it's highly unlikely now that the quarterback coach job has been filled.
So that leaves us with two positions left to fill, and that's wide receiver and running backs. Now, the running back coach, Joel Thomas, had been with the Saints for a long, long time, and he took a job with the Giants. Do you have any feelers out there, or any ideas on who the Saints might bring in? Because these are going to be Kubiak's guys. Dennis Allen, of course, has a say in it, obviously, because he's the head coach. But these are probably guys that Kubiak has worked with before, and he's going to want to have as part of his staff. Do you have any feelers out there, any names that we should be looking at?
A couple names to watch. Leonard Hankerson, young coach, wide receiver coach for the 49ers, obviously has a working relationship with Klint Kubiak. If that name sounds familiar, it's probably more so as a player. Hankerson was a collegiate receiver at the University of Miami, and I think a third or fourth round draft choice for the Washington Redskins. And no, I'm not saying that name in taunt. They were still the Redskins then. On that Redskins staff, a couple of guys named Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan. So, obviously the ties, with the Shanahan-Kubiak system go far deeper than just the last couple of years, with the 49ers. Hankerson's one guy to keep an eye on for wide receiver coach. And as you and I both kept telling people, as the Saints interviewed so many people for this offensive coordinator position, hey, listen, a lot of these guys, they are probably looking at more as potential position coaches if they are still available once they make their hire, which ultimately ended up being Klint Kubiak. One of those interviews was with Greg Lewis, currently the Ravens wide receiver coach. Well, Greg Lewis has worked in Kansas City with Andy Reid, has worked with the New Orleans Saints back in 2015, and also with the Pittsburgh Steelers back in 2014, when they had a pretty damn good receiving corps, led by the psychotic child named Antonio Brown. That's one name to watch. Another name, Brian Johnson, formerly the Eagles offensive coordinator. He's still out there floating around. And running back coach is going to be a little bit trickier. If Eric Bieniemy doesn't get a job, don't be surprised to see Eric surface somewhere as a position coach and kind of rework his way back up the ladder. Bieniemy, of course, has ties to the Gulf Coast region. Has interviewed. Didn't realize that, Michael. Thank you. I did not realize that. Okay, we're getting two different teams here.
Yeah. I think he did some at the Commanders, but I'm not positive on that either. I have to look that one up.
Okay. And a couple other names to watch too. Again, I wouldn't rule out Clay Kubiak or Brian Greasy. I don't see a spot for them on the staff right now. Two guys that I do see a spot on this staff for: Rick Dennison, who has ties with Klint Kubiak at two previous stops, and ties with Gary Kubiak all the way back to their playing days with the Denver Broncos through the 80s and early into 1990. Rick Dennison, former offensive coordinator, former offensive line coach, former running game coordinator. So, that could be a guy that would be an underrated hire, for a running back coach, or probably more accurately a run game coordinator. And then I just mentioned his name, Klint's father, Gary Kubiak. Gary has retired now as a coach a couple of times. Always resurfaces after a year or two, though. And it would not surprise me if the Saints Giants brought in Gary, and I said this before too, if they brought in Gary Kubiak as kind of a senior offensive assistant or senior consultant, because Klint only has 1 full year with play calling experience. So to bring in a guy like Gary Kubiak or Rick Dennison, who has done this many times, very successfully in more than one stop, I still expect at least one of these guys to end up on the Saints staff in some role.
It's funny when you said Brian Johnson, this is where my mind goes, and it must be Sean from somewhere beyond filtering down. I'm picturing the lead singer of AC/DC coming in going, "Well, all right." So that's Sean just filtering in me. Yeah, that is true. Gary was a running backs coach when DA was a player at Texas A&M. And so you have the A&M ties. But I don't remember. I think it was Benton who worked with Alex Gibbs, not Gary Gibbs, Alex Gibbs, on the zone blocking, run blocking scheme, which a lot of players hated to have to play against someone because it was borderline illegal, and I put that in quotation marks because of the way they would cut and the way they would catch you as they blocked. Defensive linemen hated it, but it was all inside cutback runs, which the Saints backs are built to do that. So, I mean, I hope that we get more of that kind of scheme come in. We are a zone run blocking team, but we've run more outside zones than inside zones, just because of the type of linemen that we have. We talked a little bit about this last week. This could shape a lot of the free agent decisions they make on who they're going to get, where they go in the draft. And I have a feeling you're going to see a big shakeup on this offensive line of players because they want players to fit that mold, to be able to execute the scheme. So it's going to be interesting over these next couple of weeks. And the problem that we're going to have as Saints fans is this is not a we have a year or so to start fixing this problem. This is, you got to start showing results right away. So I'm really curious to see and how these coaches work out because a lot of instant success.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, this has to work because so many jobs depend on it. Not only Dennis Allen's and the rest of the coaches, but a lot of these players too that are kind of reaching the end of the line, either contractually or age-wise or towards the end of their careers. I mean, tons of jobs depend on this being an immediate success.
Yeah, exactly. Look, they just ran my play, and I don't remember if this is a highlight or not, because this is just off of YouTube. I think Tony Romo does show it one more time, because I kind of want to go into this play and the reason why I really want this to work. I don't know if I don't think this is going to show it again because I think the way this is edited, it's going to go straight to the award ceremony. This poor girl, you don't see it. They show it from the other angle. When Kelsey hugs that dude, that guy comes at him so hard and swings his arms up. There's a girl walking behind Kelsey, and she gets belted in the face. It was purely by accident. The guy doesn't even see her, but you see her go, oh,
Alan, I got to be honest. I technically didn't see the winning touchdown. Okay. I saw the snap. I saw the roll. As soon as the ball left Mahomes' hands, I knew what was going to happen, and I just flipped it off. So I saw the play. I just didn't see the result.
Ah, okay.
And
Well,
obviously, I am not going to be able to stomach John Elway handing the Super Bowl trophy to to the Kansas
oh,
City Chiefs. I refuse to accept that.
I do enjoy the memes like of this guy and stuff where they showing Lieutenant Dan and they show that guy sitting there and it's like same energy. Yeah, here we go. All right, so this is almost it looks like when you first look at it, you think it's sprint right option, the
Mhm.
catch play, but it's not, and it's because Hardman here, and he ran this same play in 2022 against the Eagles. He goes in motion and he goes in behind Kelsey. Yeah, this is it. They show me Kelsey's right here. Okay. And this is the other tight end. He comes in motion here and then cuts out. But when he goes into motion, because Kelsey's such a threat, the defensive back jumps over to cover Kelsey because you think this guy's in the block. So he comes out of it so fast.
Mhm.
Defensive back's already committed to Kelsey, and it works within a 5 yard thing. You can't really run this deep. It's not a deep route. When he cuts back out, he hits him right away. And I love this play because I'm like, that is for a team that struggles in the red zone as much as the Saints do. And they've gotten better. But um, no, it was Hardman because I just watched it. It was Hardman because he was number 17. Now, I think Sky Moore ran it on the opposite side, but I'm almost positive. I have to go back and look at America's Game. I could be wrong, but I watched America's Game. Is how I learned the name of the play, um, and that was the route they run. But regardless, he cuts in and then takes off again, and the defensive back can't react to it. And all I could think of was Lance Moore because I'm like, Lance Moore make a killing off of a play like that because that is his kind of play.
Yeah.
And I really hope the Saints saw this and kind of incorporate it in their new offense because they need to. Um, that's the kind of play that works. Um, real quick, so the Super Bowl week, you have media talks and everything else like that. Um, Cam Jordan kind of made his rounds. They had the famous, like we saw during the regular season, Cam sacking uh,
Mhm.
uh, Matt Ryan. Well, Matt Ryan got his revenge and he sacked Cam sitting there at the CBS little pregame stuff. But they interviewed Cam, and he's talking about the Atlanta game. And he comes from the Sean Payton school of pettiness. He said, not only should we not apologize, the only thing we should have apologized for is for not dropping 50 on these guys.
Mhm.
And he makes a little dig, calls them the can't fail or the can't Falcon or can't fail count fail cons, whatever. I don't remember the exact term, but he's insulting him just like Sean Payton insulted him. And that kind of, because of Super Bowl weekend's media week, people kind of didn't make a big deal about it until much later. Cam said these things, and people were like, "Oh, he's calling out DA right now. He's saying that DA doesn't have the team because he's talking about the team being a brotherhood, and I got to apologize that we're a brotherhood." No, I'm not apologizing for any of that stuff. Your thoughts on these comments? I think it's making a mountain out of a molehill. I think this is Cam being Cam because this is Cam's personality. He's always ripping on the Falcons. He treats them like they're UCLA, and he's still at USC. How do you take these comments?
I 100% agree with you. I mean that, and I've been privileged to talk to Cam Jordan personally, via interview a couple of times. And Cam doesn't have an off switch. He is unapologetically himself. And he makes no secret of the fact that he hates the Falcons, makes no secret of the fact that he hates the Buccaneers, because if you recall, he did an interview before that. I think it was earlier that week. Where he was probably on with Kay Adams, but I could be wrong with the interviewer. But Cam said then that he named Ryan Jensen, and he wouldn't name him by name because he said he couldn't remember the guy's name, just called out the number, and the guy that holds all the time. But Cam Jordan ultimately named Ryan Jensen as the one player in the NFL that he wanted to fight. But that's Cam, and he's a very old school mentality type of athlete. Your rivals are always going to be your rivals, whether you're retired or not. And obviously, Cam is not. And I 100% agree with his assessment. I said it at the time. You never apologize to a rival. Certainly not publicly. Maybe if you're individual friends with a coach or a player, you might make a call to them in private that night or something like that and say, I just want to let you know we didn't mean to embarrass you personally or something like that, but to do so publicly shows extreme weakness. And I think that's all Cam was saying, and I 100% agree with him there. But anybody that says all that shows that Dennis Allen doesn't have the respect of the locker room, period. I think that's foolish and short-sighted. I don't have any doubt that there are individual players that do not like or respect Dennis Allen, but a guy like Cam Jordan is always, and I mean always, going to side with his teammates when it comes to us and us versus the world or us versus you type of mentality. So it didn't have anything to do with Dennis Allen, positive, negative, or indifferent. Cam was just merely pointing out, hey, what we ultimately did on the field, I thought was the right thing. And as you said, he comes from the Sean Payton school of pettiness. I mean, those two, I would love to see those two, in an analyst role together, by the way.
Absolutely.
Cam is just, again, unapologetically Cam. Your rivals, the Falcons, the Buccaneers, the Panthers. We've known he's made comments about Carolina in the past. They're always going to be his rivals, and he's always going to take an us versus you type of mentality. And I think that's all it was. It had zero to do with Dennis Allen. Again, positive, negative, or indifferent. It just Dennis Allen is not in the forefront of Cam Jordan's mind.
Yeah. I was trying to remember the offensive lineman's name, but he was the right tackle that Cam would go up against, and he called him Speedy McSpeed Bump because he was so he couldn't stop him. So he said, I don't remember the guy's name. He's just Speedy McSpeed Bump. And that's why I got this playing in the background, because this is from 2011. The fight between between Roman Harper and Steve Smith, which I always wanted to punch Steve Smith. That dude had the most punchable face I could think of any of our rivals, because he's a great player. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. I would love to have had him on my team, but I hated his ass in Carolina. I hated that guy. That was the guy that I was willing to take the fine for if I could clock that dude, knock him out of a game. Because that's what I wanted to do every time he got on the field. I'm like, just somebody launch themselves to give this dude a concussion, flip him upside down, tackle him on the head, trying to play him in the dirt, whatever it takes. I hate that dude. So people hated Roddy White with the Falcons. Roddy White didn't piss me off nearly as much because he was a fuck up for the Falcons. That's how I got to phrase this. I know this is a G-rated or PG-rated show, but he was a guy that I knew at some point in the game was going to do something stupid to cost his team the game. So I didn't care what he said, because you were going to screw up. Steve Smith didn't screw up. Steve Smith played hard and was going to beat your ass. And I knew it. And that's why I hated him so much. Julio Jones, same way. Julio Jones, I knew at some point in the game was going to fumble the ball after a big catch. So I wasn't worried about him. I'm like, you're gonna screw up right on cue. Here we go. Yep, helicopter Julio. There's the ball. We got it back. You know, all that was for nothing. You know, I mean, that's how I felt. You know, guys that I know are going to screw up on the other team, I'm like, yes, please get them the ball because I know it's going to happen. It's only a matter of time. But Steve Smith wasn't one. Cam Newton, Cam Newton, I felt was just a show off. And
Yeah.
that it just made me mad because I'm like, who the hell are you? What have you done? You know, yeah, he had an MVP season, but this is before his MVP season. He was acting like he was God's gift to quarterbacking, and I'm like, who the hell are you? You know, really? You got to earn that stuff.
Right, and
So,
along
that's
those
how
lines,
we
there are,
went.
my opinion, there are different types of rivals. And you usually hate all rivals, but there's the guys that you hate, but you know that you're going to get the best of more often than not. The Roddy Whites, the Cam Newtons, the Matt Ryans. Even for a short stint, the Tom Brady's. And then there are the guys that, as you said, and this is the ultimate respect you can pay to somebody, the guys that you absolutely loathe, the guys that, at least, my wife yells at me. I actively root for somebody to injure them and take them out of the game. But they're also the guys that you would give up a year's salary to have on your football team. The Steve Smiths, the Joe Montanas, the Roger Craigs, the Jerry Rices, to reach back, to the old NFC West days. And that's the ultimate respect that you can pay to someone, because that's a guy or a team that you just loathe so much that they literally live in your nightmares as a fan. But they're guys that you would love to have on your team. Julio Jones, Roddy White, Matt Ryan, never any desire to have on my team. Different story with Steve Smith and those 49ers guys.
Oh, Joe Montana especially, but Jerry Rice used to drive me crazy. Because I knew at some point he was going off. And the same thing with Joe Montana. Joe Montana, you could beat him up for 58 minutes in a game. But if you give him 2 minutes and they're only down by 3 or 2, he's coming to kill you. He's going to do whatever it takes to win that game. And that's what would drive me crazy. That's why I would fear those guys. When we have the arguments, Brady versus Montana, who is the GOAT? And everybody points to Brady and goes, look, he's got all the rings, he's got all the championships. I never feared Tom Brady. Nope. Never. And draw an underline, never feared him.
Nope. I feared the refs. I feared the refs, but not Tom Brady.
Yeah. Because Brady, you could break him and he would give up. And no better example of that is in 2009. You broke Brady that year. Brady had to have everything perfect for him to feel great and him to start doing stuff. He starts getting pressure. He starts getting in his face. You start hitting on him. He's throwing tablets. He's screaming at his offensive lineman. He's throwing a temper tantrum on the sideline. Joe Montana, I am telling you, I saw it. Swilling's hitting him. Jackson's hitting him. Vaughn Johnson's hitting him. Frank Warren's hitting him. We're hitting him, knocking his receivers around. We're knocking him down. He's slowly getting up and walking back like a sideline. I'm going, it doesn't matter. This son of a bitch is going to come back, and he's going to do it. We haven't scored enough points. We got to score more points. We start settling for field goals. That's all. He's praying for that because he's going to get us. And sure enough, Randy Moss, another one. But I respect the hell out of Montana. I really do. Now that he's not playing anymore. When he went to Kansas City, I was like, great. win in Kansas City. Go, and I love the games. I saw the Elway, Montana game, Kansas City against Denver. Great game. I know. I know.
But yeah, that's one of the greatest games I've ever seen.
Yeah. Um, when they beat Warren Moon and the Oilers, and Cash goes and throws that football at Buddy Ryan's fat face on the sideline. The artist drawing the banner they had on the side. Yeah, those are the guys. I enjoyed seeing Montana over there. I did not enjoy seeing Montana against the Saints because I'd seen it too many times. And for those of you who want to see the height of frustration, if you really want your blood to boil, because I don't know, you have a stress test or something you got to take for a heart monitor, go pull up Monday night opening game, 1990 season, Saints versus the 49ers. My God, that was Joe Montana doing the Saints to a T. Oh my God, that's that game. We lost 13-12, and once again, we're up 13-7 or 13-6, something like 12-6, something ridiculous like that. And all Montana had to do was boom, start hitting. So yeah, come back. Okay, we're back. Good. Yeah, I froze up for some reason. But yeah, those are the kind of guys that drove me crazy, and that's why, I know your attitude was you weren't pulling for anybody in that game, but I tell you what, I don't get upset seeing 49er fans depressed or crying because they didn't win a big game, because y'all won enough big games. I mean, I just, and Jerry, you brought a good point. Great players, but when they play the Saints, totally different game. It always seemed they elevated their game when they played the Saints too.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's not true because I've seen Montana and the 49ers do this to a lot of teams, but yeah, it seemed like, especially when the Saints played them, these were always for the division, and we always came out the short end of it. And it just, it kills you. It really does. And that's probably why I never feared Brady as much, because we usually came out on the plus side versus Brady, especially once he got to Tampa. Now, true, we didn't win in the playoff game. That was probably the most important one. But 2009, the 3 games with Peyton and Allen when he's with the Bucks, it just, I couldn't see us doing that to Montana. I just couldn't. This guy I never feared, really, Matt Ryan.
No.
Because not that Matt Ryan was a bad player, but I thought Cam Jordan was going to get to play, or I thought that someone was going to screw up for Atlanta. And if Atlanta beat us, it's because we screwed ourselves. I never felt like Atlanta won because they were the better team.
Yeah, and going back to those 49er teams that we're talking about, even Bill Walsh, the great San Francisco coach, who was with the 49ers through the end of the '88 season, he always talked about the Saints being among the NFC Super Bowl contenders that they acknowledged. And you're talking about a conference that had the Bears 46 defense, and Joe Gibbs's great teams in Washington, and Lawrence Taylor in New York. And those are the types of teams that the San Francisco 49ers had to get through to go to their Super Bowls, or to even make the NFC Championship game. But Bill Walsh always said openly that that they viewed the New Orleans Saints as every bit the threat that they did the teams in Chicago, New York, and Washington. And again, that's ultimate respect. You hated them, hated those 49ers. I do to this day, and I will till the day I die, but you had to respect them out of fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Because you didn't get the feeling that John Madden would say, hey, well, we lost to some really good 49ers teams, so there's nothing we should hang our heads about. But at the same time, you're like, but you got to get past them. You have to get past them to win, and we couldn't do it. And Roger Craig one time said they only had an offense, they could beat us because their defense was good enough. They just didn't have the offense, and it was a frustrating thing. And Jim Finks was a great general manager for the Saints. His first draft class with the Saints was probably one of the best, and his last draft class with the Saints gave us a Hall of Famer, and that was in Willie Roaf. Okay. In the middle, though, he had a lot of draft classes that were suspect is a kind word. Probably pretty bad is a much more accurate term. That really prevented the Saints from getting next level, and it was really the offensive players he was bringing in. We bring in Brett Perryman, but we didn't have the passing game, and he wasn't an X receiver. He wasn't a dominating receiver that could take Eric Martin's job and stretch the field. In fact, he really wasn't even a good wide receiver until he got to Detroit. But he had Herman side help. Also, so those teams also were missing a consistent running attack. Not a great running attack, but a consistent one. You had Ruben Mays in the beginning, then Dalton Hilliard in the middle. But when you needed to take that next, I don't know how much you remember of the late 80s Saints teams, because I don't remember when you started watching them a lot. Was it 86, 87, 88, or a little later?
No, it was 86, 87, 88 when I watched them, obviously when I could. I was a big fan of Inside the NFL. That's when they actually showed highlights then. So if I didn't get to watch a Saints game, I would catch it on Inside the NFL. So yeah, I mean, I followed those Zone Patrol teams. Huge fans of obviously the linebackers, but also the defensive linemen, and even Bobby Hebert and those guys too, and Dalton Hilliard on offense. So yeah, I followed them as closely as I could.
Yeah, the problem was Ruben Mays started getting hurt in 88, 89, 90. He was getting hurt a lot more. Dalton Hilliard had that great season in 89. Then he started getting hurt. And Ironhead Hayward just never panned out what they wanted out of a running back. They needed somebody who can, first off, control his weight, but secondly, kind of be that power back. They just never got that. And I think that showed when they got to the playoffs. That was the weakness of those more teams, was the offense could not. And Bobby Hebert would always have his worst games in the playoffs. He was awful in 3 of the 4 playoff games. So, that's why those teams didn't win. It wasn't because of the defense. It was generally the offense couldn't finish, and it's because they couldn't run the ball. And you didn't have the big receivers to stretch the field. So, Bob, real quick, what do you have coming up tomorrow night in the Bayou Blitz, or is it going to be Thursday night again?
We're giving you guys a Valentine's Day present by not forcing you to see our faces on Valentine's Day. So Brendan and I are going to give you a show on Thursday. We're going to delve into, but everybody had been so caught up, and rightfully so, with the playoffs, the Super Bowl, and in the Saints' cases, the coaching staff overhaul. But free agency is like a month away. So we're going to start to delve into some specific free agent fits for the Saints. I don't want to hear they don't have the money to sign anybody, salary cap, blah, blah, blah. Is this your first day on earth? Because we're not going to go through this. We do go through this every single year. The Saints
Absolutely.
are not going to sign any of the high-profile free agents, but there's still plenty of names out there. We're going to talk about some of the best fits, best potential fits, not only for this new offensive system, but they have some holes on defense too. As you and I had pointed out several times. So we're going to to dip our toe in the free agency pool, but we're going to do it on Thursday. At 8 p.m. Your time, Central Time, and then 9 p.m. on the West Coast.
Yeah, absolutely. That's where we're gonna focus next week on this show too. Is more on free agency, going position by position. Guys that you don't think will probably be back next year. And we'll probably start with the quarterbacks. And no, Derek Carr is not going to be one of the players that
No.
Bob and I are talking about will not be back, because he is going to be back. They're going to restructure his deal to get that money. It makes too much sense to not do it. It makes too much sense to do it. It makes no sense to not do it, is what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say. You have to restructure that deal, because that's the easiest way to get your money. And quite frankly, you need they have other needs they have to address before they bring in a quarterback. And this was the last thing I was saving this for next week, but I'll bring it up now. If you look at the way the Chiefs were built, you had an Alex Smith in there before you got Patrick Mahomes. They built a lot of that team up. So when Alex Smith was pushed us out the door and they brought in Mahomes, that's when Mahomes was the final piece. And I'm not saying that Saints are going to follow that same plan, but it just shows you can still win with a competitive quarterback, which Carr is. He's not elite, but he's competitive. He keep you in games. That will allow you to fill in these other holes. Calvin talked about James Williams as safety. That's a need that we have in the draft. Offensive line, pass rusher, all those things. Bring those guys in, build up this offensive line, get it the way you want, and then bring in a quarterback who's all of a sudden, boom, look what you got. Look at all this you got. You're set up for success now. We're not going to do like we did to Anthony Richardson, and what happens to so many quarterbacks, where it's like, okay, you're the savior. Good luck behind that Swiss cheese offensive line. And
Right.
You need receivers? Yeah, we'll get you some receivers. We might get you a running game. The rest of the time, you're going to be running for your freaking life. And the Saints aren't that bad. But we have to start addressing those other things. So, yeah, we'll talk about free agency next week.
And to your point, as we've said every single week, Dennis Allen's trying to keep his job. A 9-8 season is not going to keep Dennis Allen's job, so he knows that. So this is not the same situation as Alex Smith and Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. People conveniently forget that that in Patrick Mahomes' rookie year, he didn't play. Alex Smith was still the starter. They saw an opportunity to move and get Mahomes, so they did it. Good for them. But to your point, this was a team that was already winning in Mahomes' rookie year, when Smith was still the starter. Kansas City ended up being the number 2 seed in the AFC that year. They did what Andy Reid teams always did and lost in the first round of the playoffs, or what the Chiefs always did. Pre-Mahomes. But Mahomes came to a team with receivers, with a running game, with an adequate defense, and most importantly, with an offensive line. The Saints don't have that. And again, Dennis Allen's trying to keep his job. They're not going to go after a quarterback early in the draft, and they're not going to cut loose with Derek Carr and try to bring in a big name free agent. They're just not.
No. So I think it's one of those things that you probably will be looking at a quarterback next year or the year after. More than likely the year after, honestly. Just because I think they really want to kind of get their cap in order, trying to get start building up the depth on this team and see what they have here. And the Saints are remarkably patient. Much to the chagrin of Saints fans who want to blow it all up, it's not going to happen. So yeah, I mean, those are all things, obviously, we'll talk more about next week. In the meantime, don't forget, catch the Bayou Blitz Thursday night instead of tomorrow night. Spend your Valentine's with your particular Valentine, whoever that may be. Unless you're like, me and you get arrested for that. But just kidding. Just kidding. Reminds me of that joke. I was seeing a girl until the police came and took my binoculars away. But yeah, so enjoy your Valentine's Day. Those of you in New Orleans. Oh, Calvin's birthday is tomorrow. Happy early birthday, Calvin.
Happy birthday, Calvin.
Yeah, that day sucks. Yeah, I can see why people would think that. But yeah, enjoy Mardi Gras. What few hours there are left of it. I got work tomorrow, so I got to get out of here too. And check the Bayou Blitz out on Thursday night, and we'll see you next time under the dome. Good night, everybody.
Night all.
Oh, I can show you guys this real quick. Now Bob's gone. This is an official Who Dat fan club Saints glass from 1987. Show that to y'all real quick, those of y'all who are sticking with me till the bitter end. But yeah, I've had these in my cabinet for a while. These were actually my mother-in-law's. I think I inherited these. So I was drinking out of this. Those of y'all who didn't see those, yeah, this glass is from 1987. I got a set of 4. Anyway, thank y'all. See y'all next time. Good night, everybody.